I would like to move on to the next speaker, Vivekanand Sistla. He is currently an R&D director for personal care at Unilever. He is responsible for design and development of hair care products and packaging in Southeast Asia and Australasia regions. He is also responsible for driving Unilever R&D sustainability and capability agenda for Thailand and inland Asian clusters. He will be sharing his experiences about responsible consumption and production from the business perspective. Please welcome to Vivekanand.
Sawadee, thank you very much for the opportunity. Let me try and share my screen and tell me if you can see it.
Okay, I can see it. I can see the screen now.
Let me just.
So at the lower right corner, yes. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Good. I'm not sure how to hide this, but let me try my best. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for the opportunity. As I said, what I'll do today is talk about our efforts on circular plastics. We heard the previous speakers speak about their work on food. Fantastic work by Lotus and the team. I'd like to share some of our progress on plastic commitments. So I'll talk largely in the context of ASEAN and some of the work we've done in the last couple of years in this part of the world. Quick introduction to Unilever. Hopefully all of you know us. We're about 88 years now in Thailand. We see ourselves very much as a local company in each of our local markets, working on local problems for local consumers and finding local solutions with the benefit of global expertise and technology. We've been around for several years in the industry. You know most of our brands. We serve about 2.5 billion consumers every year through our products and services. What is central to Unilever is our purpose. So our purpose is to make sustainable living commonplace. So every single employee of Unilever is focused on developing sustainable solutions. And I work in research and development, and pretty much my team is working on sustainable product design and packaging design, as part of our work plans. And it's one of the biggest reasons why new employees choose to join our company, because they believe they can work on practical solutions to sustainability challenges. Unilever is well recognized for our sustainability leadership. In the last few years, and including in 2021, we've been rated as the #1 company for sustainability by peer groups. It's a big responsibility for us and very important that we continue to maintain this recognition and leadership. We were also a principal partner for the COP26 earlier this year. Over the last 10 years, we have made progress on several of our commitments that we had made in the past on health and well-being, environmental impact, and enhanced livelihoods. I won't go into the detail today, but recently we have made further commitments on climate, and included in that is a 1 billion climate and nature fund that we will sponsor. Our target is 2039 for net zero emissions in our operations. So we'd like to be ahead of many of the other commitments out there. And we've taken some fairly far-reaching commitments across different elements, including deforestation. We also have commitments around the food and waste of food, halving our food waste in our direct operations in the next 3 to 4 years, and zero waste to landfill, and no good food destroyed. So these are also commitments that our foods businesses are going to tackle in the next coming years. But today is about plastics and the situation in ASEAN. On plastics, we've made 3 large commitments. The first commitment is to halve the use of virgin plastic in our footprint globally. And we will do that by 2 means. We'll do that by using more recycled plastic, and we'll do that by also reducing plastic in our packaging by design. The second commitment is to use only recyclable, reusable, or compostable packaging. So by 2025, all our existing packaging, which is not recyclable, will be converted to recyclable. And the last commitment then is that we will collect and process more plastic than we sell. So we also commit that any plastic packaging that goes out into the environment is then collected and put back into the chain. So these are the commitments that we have made. All of these are for 2025. And we have made progress against each of these. It's a journey, and I'll tell you where we are right now. But let me spend a moment on the ASEAN picture as well. I think we all know this, but it's worth repeating in the context of this discussion that the plastic problem hasn't gotten any easier. In fact, after the COVID challenges of the last 18 months, things have probably gotten a step back because of the lack of sufficient collection, a lot of recycling infrastructure not fully utilized, and some projects being delayed. So there's a big need for us to pick up from where things were and accelerate this process. So the question we always ask is, are we choking in plastic waste, as Science magazine said? Because the amount of mismanaged plastic waste in our part of the world and the amount of plastic waste going as marine debris, as we well know, 80% of it is in Southeast Asia. But actually, we also need to look at this as a business opportunity. Ultimately, unless we find value in this chain of recovery and reuse, we will not get enough people interested. So the World Bank estimate this is the highest I have seen actually, 6 billion wasted on Southeast Asia plastics because we only have about 25%. Even that's a generous estimate, of recycling. So there is significant value in managing plastic better than we have in the past. So what is our approach at Unilever? From a design perspective, our approach is to do what we call less plastic, better plastic, and no plastic. Less plastic is about, at every stage of design, can we see how we can use lesser plastic than before? So maybe, for example, lightweighting up our bottles. For example, reducing the size of our sachets and pouches. So can we use less plastic? Better plastic is about using recycled plastic, about creating recyclable solutions, and finding biodegradable or compostable solutions. That's what we call better plastic. And then no plastic, we also have work in this space to see, are there opportunities in some cases to not use plastic at all, but replace with another material? But we understand also that all of this, from a design perspective, goes hand in hand with the right waste management and partnerships externally. So that's our journey to circular. Over the last few years, as we have seriously tackled the plastic challenge, we've learned a few things, and we've summarized these under 3 headings. We call it educate, enable, and expand. Educate is about educating consumers, educating our partners, educating the wider environment outside on the right way of collecting plastic waste through consumer segregation of plastic waste from other waste within plastic waste and segregating to the right degree that we need for recycling. That's the first step. Second is enable, which is what are the collection infrastructure, mechanism, technology, and tools that we need to do the right amount of collection of plastic that is then discarded by consumers. And finally, there's a technology element, which is once you've collected the plastic, what kind of technologies and techniques and tools can be used to manage it, recycle it, and put it back into the system at the highest value possible to recover the 6 billion we talked about earlier. So the intention of this to say that the 3E model is to create value across the supply chain. And at each stage, we believe that there's a business case for somebody to create some value for themselves. Let me talk about the technical challenges first. So I'll talk about the expand part. And let me take 2 examples. So in the case of Unilever products, we have got 2 significant challenges in this part of the world to be able to move to 100% recyclable, like I mentioned. The first is on flexibles. A lot of our packaging in Vietnam, for example, or Indonesia, or Philippines for that matter, would be in consumer sachets, small sachets, medium-sized sachets, large sachets, or pouches. Today, they're all made with multi-layer structures. So it could be PET plus PE or PET plus PP, other structures, which are not easy then to recycle, even if they're collected. So one job we have is to convert our recyclable packaging from multi-layer non-recyclable to mono-layer recyclable. And the other big challenge we have is, for example, in our beauty products, is to do the recyclability of pumps and other dispensing mechanisms. And these are very fast growing parts of the market, as you can see some of the numbers on the chart. So I'd like to share a couple of examples of what we have done in the last couple of years. So this year we launched in America, Love Beauty and Planet, which is a beauty care brand, which is a 100% recyclable bottle already, but the pump was not recyclable in the past, because the pump is made of several different materials, as you can see on the screen. Each of them is a different component made of different materials, and then you can't recycle the whole. So this year we worked with our partners to design the first mono-material polypropylene-based pump that is a single structure and will then, if collected, be fully be able to be recycled. Not only that, there's a pigment in that pump cap that can then be detected at the recycling facility to allow the right kind of segregation and sorting. So this is the first time that we have done this, and thanks to our partners, and we hope to roll it out to the rest of the world in the next couple of years. Similarly, in the case of pouches, we have in different parts of the world, again this year, managed to move our pouches from multi-layer structures to mono-layer structures, Turkey, America, Europe. There have been significant technical challenges to overcome. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. But what we have realized is that by working with the right kind of partners who have the technology expertise and the right kind of internal technical experts, we can create the right brief and the right kind of situation that helps us solve problems. So each of these is slightly different product inside, requiring slightly different barrier properties and requires slightly different technical solutions as a result. So our partners, Mondi, Dove, and others have helped us to reach these solutions. In the case of Southeast Asia and Vietnam, as I mentioned earlier, sachets are a big part of our sales. I'm really happy to tell the audience here today that just a few days ago, literally a couple of weeks ago, we have managed to launch the first recyclable sachets in Hanoi in Vietnam, which have just hit the market. This is our brand called Clear, which is a shampoo brand, anti-dandruff shampoo brand. And those sachets out there, you see the pictures of, are actually in the market now in Hanoi. There is a QR code on the pack telling the consumer where they can go and deposit the sachet after use. We're also doing a consumer campaign with it to educate consumers, and we are partnering with a few of our partners in Vietnam to help them collect, segregate, sort, and recycle these sachets back into the system with the help of our recycler partners. So this is our first experiment in this part of the world to do a fully circular design from scratch and then focus on our biggest challenge, which is sachets. It's still early days. We've just launched in one country, in one brand. We now need to scale this up to take it to all of our brands in all of our countries in Southeast Asia over the next 3 to 4 years, and that's our plan. So what have been our learnings in this process? Actually, we learned a lot of things that when you start to change material design, we have to think of a lot of things. On the one side, there are supply chain considerations. We make millions and millions of these products every day or every week. Our existing infrastructure, so the machinery in our factories, not all of it was compatible with the new structures, and not all of it was able to manage the new structures. So we have to invest significantly in upgrading and changing the technology of our machines with our machine partners to be able to run these new structures, because they tend to be more flimsy. They tend to not have the same kind of structural properties as multi-layer structures. So designing for manufacture is a big part of the problem, especially the kind of scale we are talking about. The other part is functionality, obviously, because we need the product to be kept safe. We need a long shelf life. We need the product to be the sachet to be printable at a good quality so consumer can read all the instructions and ingredients. And we also need then that to have the right kind of functionality like tearability and ease of use for the consumer. That's the other challenge. How do you design something that meets both consumer requirements and the supply chain requirements? And of course, while we're trying to move from one structure to the other, we can't do something then that does not improve the recyclability in the total system, not just outside our factory, but beyond consumer usage. How can we pick it up and then recycle it back? So we have been working with these new structures, monomaterials, with our recycling partners to give them the materials and say, if you could recycle this, what can you create? And we are happy to note that the early response is quite positive, that this is quite recyclable. It can be mixed with other recycled PE streams and can fully go back into circularity. So we're happy with that, but there's a big missing step in between, of course, which is the collection part. Yeah. So designing for new structures actually means designing for recyclability end to end. That's been our learning, and that's our recommendation. Coming then to rigid structures, we have been working on the last couple of years on trying to include post-consumer recycled packaging, or PCR, into our packaging in Southeast Asia. So these brands you see on here, and actually several more brands which are not on like Dove and Sunsilk, all use different levels of recycled packaging already. Some of these here are all 100% recycled packaging, and in our beauty care products, we have less than 100%, but we made a start to use recycled packaging in those products as well. So what we are hoping for is that we can start using recycled packaging, recycled content in our packaging, and create demand. So because recycled packaging requires significant investments of infrastructure, so we need to collect plastic, bring it to a facility, recycle it, and then sell it to users like us. And not everybody is willing to invest till they see a demand. So our job here as Unilever and as a user company is to create demand by saying that yes, we are in the market for recycled plastics. And I'm telling everybody in the audience who's interested, if you have recycled our HDPE or our PET, we're interested in talking to you. Yeah. So we started doing this by importing into Southeast Asia, but we would like to make it circular economy in the countries in Southeast Asia. That's our goal, and we're happy we made a start. We'd like more organizations to join us. We're also looking at other technologies, for example, chemical recycling beyond mechanical recycling. It's still very early days. Chemical recycling has a lot of challenges to scale up and be cost effective. But for hard to recycle plastics, we need alternate methods to mechanical recycling. So we are working with companies like Ionica and Indorama in this example, where we're trying to create, take plastic waste, be able to create monomers and use them back in our packaging. This is one example of what we have done, but there's more to come. And of course, there are several challenges on scalability and cost, which we have to overcome. So that was on what I called expand, which is the technology side. But technology is only as good as our ability to collect the plastic and bring it back into the loop as a first step. So looking at the education side, so consumer point of view, when we did some consumer research, what did we learn? Around 53% of consumers are already reusing disposable items. 47% of consumers like or would like to buy products made from recycled materials. And 36% of consumers are willing to stop buying a packaging that's not recyclable. So from an intent perspective, consumer interest in this area is going up. It is still relatively low overall in Southeast Asia compared to other parts of the world, but interest is growing. Interest is certainly growing. So that is not an excuse for us anymore. We made this film in India. I just want to show you a quick clip of consumer education around segregation. Yeah. So this was done with many of our partners, including Gaze. Sorry about that. Give me a moment. Yeah. So it's a simple message saying, why, if we segregate and separate everything else in our lives, why not plastic waste as well? And in terms of education, we have done other programs in Southeast Asia as well with different partners to try and educate our consumer base, but also the industry and our partners and ourselves, in terms of what is the best way to land the message that everything starts with segregation, that increases the recyclability, that increases the value of the plastic in the end. We're also working on education in terms of reuse systems. So we committed also that a certain proportion of our business, we'd like to look at reuse and refill technologies. So on the left side is bottles that might the consumer can take home, use, and then bring them back to a store to refill. We could also have other models with, for example, door-to-door delivery we're doing with a process called Loop with many other partners. So what we promised is that we will experiment and pilot in this space around the world, and we'll share our learning from time to time online. So I've given the link here. I'll put that in the chat later. You can go and read about our progress in the space of reuse and recycling systems. So this we also think is very important. In some situations, it's quite possible to reuse quite effectively and reduce the impact of the total plastic used in the system. So we are also then working with several partners on actual collection systems. So coming to this middle part, which is enable, we have different tie-ups around the world, including with the UN, DP in India, looking at, and Bangladesh and Pakistan, I think, looking at different models to do hygienic, safe kind of collection of plastics. We've got partnerships with the local government, NGOs, and other company partners in Indonesia on the waste banks. So around 12,000 tons of waste collected already through the waste banks in Indonesia. And similarly in Philippines, we have something that is, again, across industry partnership, and we have a plastic credit exchange program. So we're working on different types of pilots around Asia to look at what's the right way to educate, but also then segregate, collect, and scale up, and to create some kind of a repeatable model that we can use again and again when it comes to collection of plastic. Because that's where the whole story really lies, And in Thailand, closer to home, we have about 8 partnerships in Thailand, looking at different types of models again on collection. We have a recycled collection center in the middle of the picture set up with some of our partners here. We can drive through, leave your plastic waste, and then go ahead. We're also doing some work with Sansari in terms of doing work at actual condos where consumers would like to segregate and separate their waste. So these are all pilots, but we really need to build more scale. In the UK, we have set up something called the Flexible Plastic Fund, which is with the Unilever and several of our partners that you can see on this page. Here again, the intention is to create a 1 million fund to be able to collect and recycle flexible packaging easier, because that's a challenge sort of all over the world. Yeah? So that's a bit of the progress that we have made on the different elements I spoke about, which is educating, enabling, and expanding to be able to go along with our commitments to make progress on recyclability, on use of recycled plastic, on collection and processing. Yeah? If I may just summarize my thoughts from today, the first word that comes to me is collaboration, because there's a lot of stuff involved here which is well outside our scope of expertise. We recognize this long back. We work with several technical partners. We work with partners in countries, in education and government, NGOs. We are willing to work with anybody to be able to find solutions in this space. In terms of collection, I think there are a couple of big opportunities, certainly in Southeast Asia. One is to harmonize the touch points and the technology solutions on collection. So for example, if there's one app for collection and there's some people are using a different app, why can't these apps talk to each other so that it makes it easier for consumers to know where to go and collect their waste? Similarly, in the case of PCR, we find that more commitments from companies to use PCR and working together on regulations for PCR and tax incentives will probably benefit the industry totally. That is my talk for today. I appreciate it, the time. And thank you very much again, and welcome your questions.
Thank you very much, Kun Vivekanand. So there's one question from the audience. So regarding the recyclable sachet in Vietnam's monomaterials, which plastic type is used and mechanical or chemical recycling?
Yes, so this is mono PE structure. So this is a polyethylene structure. We were using a PET PE structure in the past. So as I mentioned, this is literally a couple of weeks old. So we have just gone to the market with these, with the consumer education campaign. And we have worked with some recyclers to show that this can be recycled. But as I mentioned earlier, and it's important to note that we still need to do the right kind of collection. So we're also doing some pilots around collection and the QR code to educate consumers where to take the sachets. But this is PE, polyethylene.
Okay. So this is for my personal question. So regarding like a sausage type of packages, so there's still a lot of demands on these like small packages products. I thought that the per unit cost maybe is higher, but maybe they cannot like buy like a big bottle of shampoos or yeah.
Yes. So if you look at, for example, life cycle analysis, it's quite interesting that the flexible sachet, which is like the 5 peso sachet in Philippines or dong in Vietnam, these are per mil of product or per gram of product, much cheaper than using, for example, bottles or other materials. So while bottles are obviously very convenient to use, like you mentioned, the put down price for many consumers is very high, so they can't afford. Bottles make sense when it's a certain size and above. Mm-hmm. And then in bottles, what we need to do is encourage reuse. So if bottles are reused, then the packaging use per gram will come down. In the case of sachets, they're actually quite light, and it's a very cost-effective and low plastic usage solution that we have today. The problem being, of course, that it's all over the place and hard to collect and recycle. Yeah,
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So Unilever also have done a lot of like working on like an eco design, right? But there's some barriers that maybe there's no local manufacturers could like produce such a product. So in terms of cost effectiveness, so having this like eco design is more costly or cheaper.
Okay, so it depends on the situation. So for example, the post-consumer recycled I talked about, so using recycled plastic in our packaging in ASEAN today is more expensive. And why is that? Because two reasons. One is that if we import it into the country, then there's a total cost of importation, etc., and the landed cost is quite high. If you want to make it in Southeast Asia, many of our partners are setting up facilities now in Thailand or Indonesia, as well. But the amount of plastic collected today is quite low. So if you want to get plastic to the recycling plant of good quality, because one of the important things in consumer goods is passing something called a migration test. A migration test makes sure that nothing from the plastic is going into the product and damage consumers in any way. So the migration test requirement is quite a strict one. So to make it safe for consumers by still using recycled plastic, you need good quality input, and that is sometimes costly because we don't have scale. But we believe that if we invest today and we build scale over the few years, the prices should come down. But our job is to then, stimulate demand and interest in this space. And we hope that over time, prices will come down. But yes, moving to recyclable or recycled solutions today is a bit more expensive in this part of the world.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Kun Vivekanand.